These are the last German holdouts after World War II, the soldiers who somehow didn't get the memo that the war was over. Let's dive right into it.
No matter how you look at it, the Second World War was a nasty affair. And it would have been a lot less painful for everyone if we could have just skipped it altogether and gone straight to the victory of global capitalism. Ah, yes, if only Adam Smith could see us now. But there were some among the German camp who, well, they wouldn't take a hint, even after Herr Hitler performed what many would argue to be his only redeeming act, killing Hitler. That happened on the 30th of April, which is also, coincidentally, International Jazz Day, leaving what was left of Nazi Germany in the hands of Admiral Dönitz. He would sign Germany's unconditional surrender on the 8th of May, while simultaneously organizing the largest naval evacuation in history, though that's a different topic. Now, at the time of the surrender, German control in Europe looked more or less like this. Certainly a fair bit of land, though ironically almost none in Germany itself.
Poor Norway. The map at surrender looks like a glitchy save file, German garrisons clinging to coastlines, while Germany isn't really Germanying. That's the paradox of late war logistics. Control without core, outposts that outlived the plot, and the April 30th crossover event, Grim History meets International Jazz Day, feels darkly on brand. The regime fades while the horns keep riffing.
Today, we'll learn who these die-hard stragglers were and when they surrendered. And you'll also get to hear about our dear friends over at Blinkist, but more about them at the end. Let's start from the west, on the Atlantic shores of France. As we all know, the Germans conquered France in June 1940, after a less than glamorous 6-week campaign. They took control of France's Atlantic ports with the intent of using them as forward operating bases for their U-boat fleet. Now, these ports were respectable in their own right, but over the next 3 years, the Germans would build them up into impenetrable citadels, each fielding a garrison of at least 20,000 men. Fast forwarding to 1944, when D-Day rolled around and the Allies swept through the French countryside, they had to figure out what to do with all these German strongholds in their rear, so to speak. Storming them would be a bloody affair, while bombing them would result in immense collateral damage to the nearby towns and their civilian populations. So the Allies decided to simply surround them and do nothing. It wasn't all that bad of a plan. The garrisons didn't really have the resources to stage a major breakout, and where would they be breaking out to, anyway? While the besiegers would just have to sit tight and keep an eye out, which was about as low risk of an assignment as one could get on the Western Front. The strategy worked. For once, Germany capitulated. The garrisons followed suit a few days later, happy to make it out with their lives, and at least some German soldiers in Lorient marked the occasion with a volleyball match.
A volleyball match, of course. Nothing says defeat of fascism quite like a friendly set of beach sports between bunkers. It's bizarrely poetic. Millions die across Europe, and somewhere in Lorient, Hans is yelling out over a sand serve. What's wild is how these fortresses were too strong to matter. Literal concrete trophies of over-engineering. The Allies just ghosted them, the military equivalent of leaving a text on read. Surround and chill might have been their smartest play all year.
Going a bit to the northeast, we'll find the Channel Islands, the only part of the British Empire proper to be occupied by the Germans. The small archipelago had no strategic importance, of course, and was evacuated once it was clear that the Battle of France was lost, despite intense protest from our dear friend Sir Winston Churchill, who scoffed at the idea of Britain surrendering its oldest crown possession without a fight. The Germans occupied the islands with no resistance in early July 1940, and then went about their usual program of erecting forced labor camps and building extensive fortifications. Come D-Day, the islands were ignored, much like the Atlantic naval bases. However, unlike the Atlantic naval bases, the Channel Islands had no major supply stockpiles. By the time Germany capitulated, both the remaining civilians and the occupiers were on the brink of starvation, and so they surrendered the very next day. Further east, we have the infamous pocket of Dunkirk. In a great twist of irony, the site where the Nazis almost pushed the British Expeditionary Force into the sea would become the place of their own intense struggle. Under the iron command of Vice Admiral Friedrich Frisius, the 10,000-man garrison survived several assaults by the Allies. He famously staged the last German offensive operation in France on the dawn of April the 5th, which pushed the Allies an impressive 15 kilometers before digging in until the end of the war.
The poetic symmetry at Dunkirk is just chef's kiss. The Nazis end up trapped in the same spot they once bragged about dominating. Talk about karmic urban planning. And the Channel Islands, basically a starving historical footnote that Churchill wanted to die over for symbolism. Classic Winston move. Lose men for pride, not geography. Also, imagine being a soldier stuck there. Months of hunger, no glory, no point, just waiting for news and pretending the bunker soup tastes like empire.
He too surrendered a day after Germany capitulated, and then spent 2 years in a POW camp before ultimately being released and spending the rest of his days back home in Saxony. In the nearby Netherlands, we have 2 islands holding through the capitulation. The island of Texel was garrisoned by a battalion of Georgians from the country, not the state, who had been captured on the Eastern Front and had chosen to switch sides. On the 5th of April, they suddenly decided that the Nazis were no longer cool and instigated a bloody rebellion, which wasn't resolved until the Allies arrived on the 20th of May. Meanwhile, on another Dutch island, the Germans just flat out refused to surrender all the way until the 11th of June, making that unremarkable strip of land the last part of Europe to be liberated from Axis occupation. To the north, in Norway, we'll find nearly 400,000 German soldiers. Originally stationed to cover Germany's northern flank, by May 1945, they were surely counting their blessings that they weren't fighting on the Eastern Front. Many soldiers had an almost peacetime attitude, taking Sundays off, which made some sense. After all, Norway at the time had a population of barely 3 million, so the Germans had effectively total control over it. There was some fear that the Nazis would try to bunker down in Norway, but luckily they laid down their arms and fully surrendered on the 11th of May.
Crazy how your geographical coordinates could mean the difference between instant oblivion or a lazy Sunday off. Like, same war, same army, but one guy's freezing in Stalingrad while another's sipping coffee in Oslo, waiting for the memo that it's over. It's war's ultimate lottery. Location, location, annihilation. The Norwegians probably watched 400,000 Germans occupy their fjords with the enthusiasm of interns forced to attend a meeting that's already been cancelled.
On the nearby Danish island of Bornholm, the 10,000-strong German garrison initially refused to surrender to the Soviets and endured a fierce bombing campaign before giving up on the 9th of May. The Soviets were also having a field day in Latvia, where 200,000 German and Latvians were encircled, even after Admiral Dönitz's miracle evacuations. They surrendered on the 10th of May and received the classic Soviet treatment of mass deportations to forced labor camps in wonderful Siberia. On the other side of Europe, the Germans retained parts of Crete and Rhodes for a few more days, as well as scattered pockets in Yugoslavia, where things get a bit too graphic for our show. Parts of Austria and Czechia were also yet to be captured by the advancing Soviets. And of course, we have Berlin itself, where fighting continued until the 9th of May. Beyond these territories were numerous German soldiers scattered across the world. The last active U-boat, for example, fled to Argentina, providing absolutely no fuel for conspiracy theories, and only surrendered on the 17th of August.
It's honestly wild how surrender dates turned into a world tour of denial. Some Germans were still fighting in May, others tanning in Crete, and one submarine basically rage quit all the way to Argentina. The Soviets, they didn't liberate, they reallocated people to scenic Siberia. It's like the war's final act became a chaotic epilogue. Some men die in rubble, others just slowly realize the Reich's Wi-Fi has been disconnected.
The very last German troops to give up their arms were stranded on the frigid Norwegian island of Svalbard, where they were tasked with establishing a secret weather station. They only got the chance to surrender on the 6th of September, when they were rescued by a crew of Norwegian seal hunters. Of course, this is just one of the thousands of stories you can find neatly retold by our good friends over at Blinkist. Thanks to the Blinkist app, you can subsume vast quantities of knowledge in delicious bite-sized 15-minute chunks. I myself have been reading up on the Second World War, especially the daring Allied airman rescue from Yugoslavia, which I may or may not cover here in the future. The Blinkist library itself contains over 5,500 non-fiction titles in topics like history, science, and culture. And they also have a wonderful audio experience for when you're walking your dog or tending to your ornamental bonsai tree. They also recently released a new feature called Blinkist Spaces, where you can share your favorite titles with your friends and loved ones, even if they don't have a subscription. And here's the best part. As a special courtesy to SideQuest viewers, Blinkist are offering a 7-day free trial and 25% off their annual premium subscriptions if you go to blinkist.com/SideQuest or visit the link in the description. Of course, we'd be remiss to forget thanking our loyal supporters on Patreon. It is through your grace that we can continue exploring the fascinating side quests of world history. Thank you, my friends, for watching, and stay tuned for the next belatedly submissive episode of Side Quest.
There's something almost poetic about it all. The last remnants of the Third Reich freezing on Svalbard, surrounded by polar bears and irony. A weather station becomes the final outpost of a global nightmare, rescued not by soldiers or diplomats, but by seal hunters. You couldn't write a darker comedy of history if you tried. Humanity ends wars like it ends bad group projects, awkwardly with someone still taking notes long after everyone else has gone home. SideQuest did an amazing job with this one. Brilliant pacing, humor, and detail. You can find the full video linked in the description. As for what's coming next, let's just say it involves something ancient, something strange, and maybe, just maybe, a twist you didn't see coming. Stay nerdy.